I'm Nate Jackson.
And I'm Eben Britton.
And this is the Caveman Poet Society.
The giants were my delight, my folly, my anodyne, my intellectual stimulation. With huff I stunted, up and down the room among the bar stools, preparing to, quote, shoot the gap, end quote. With Schaffner I faked two defenders, quote, out of their cleats, end quote. Took high swimming passes over my right shoulder and trotted, dipsy-doodle-like, into the end zone. With Robustelli I swept into backfields and with cruel disdain flung flat-footed, helpless quarterbacks to the turf.
We've got a gorilla here and a wolf.
I love it.
And a Jew.
And a Jew.
I love that.
A gorilla, a wolf,
It's
and a
like-
Jew walk into a bar.
It's like Noah's Ark in this motherfucker.
Well, let's get fucking biblical then. This is the Caveman Poet Society. I almost forgot the name because we're formerly Mindful Warrior. This is our third episode as the Caveman Poet Society. What's up, Beb? How are you?
I'm fired up today, bro.
I can tell, man. I'm feeling it. It's
yeah,
good.
It's good. It feels good. I feel fucking activated.
What's got your goose, man? Or what's got your balls or whatever it is?
Well, I mean, this might need to be a podcast on its own, but this dealing with this line of duty benefit with the NFL and the fucking hoops they want you to jump through, the flaming hot hoops that they want you to continuously jump through. Not that, my back injury and all the fact that I can't turn my head isn't enough to just get me fucking a little bit of money a month for putting my body through hell for 6 years. But, we could talk about that another time.
Which reminds me, what are we getting paid for this shit?
$0.
Oh, okay.
Promotional.
As usual.
Before we introduce that Jew, we're going to introduce Jed. How are you, Jed? He's doing good. There are no available mics, so he's just over there in the corner, vaping, as it were. Also, as usual, Gandalf, what's up? Sleeping on the rug. And now it brings me to our two guests, who are friends of mine. I
wouldn't go that far.
Well, okay. Let's be serious here. My editor for both of my books, Slow Getting Up and Fantasy Man. Also the
I only take credit for the first.
Whatever, dude. Yeah, that's all you, the second, man. Your name's on that.
I took out as much feces as I could from the text.
Hey, man, it's still full of shit, though, isn't it? So David Hirshey, my editor, and his buddy Fred Schruers, a writer, and they went to college together. What's up, guys? How are you?
Good to be here,
Couldn't
guys.
be better.
It's good to have you guys, man.
Yeah.
I know you've been trying for a long time, but we play hard to get.
Yeah.
Because,
You play hardball.
You guys wanted to wait
we're
until
much
we
coveted.
were more established.
We're much coveted. We wanted a new name, actually.
You got it.
Yeah, we can't go on a show that with
Mindful Warriors.
You guys look
broken down warriors. Maybe that.
Both of you look like you just stepped out of a cave.
Oh, that's sweet.
That's very.
Thanks. We stepped into a cave, rather.
That's right. You're always
Amen.
stepping into one cave or
Yes,
another.
sir.
Hershey, how long have I known you? For 5, 6 years, 7 years? Well, it was probably 2011, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
2011, was that when we were smoking in your hotel room at the Ace?
No, that was when we were smoking in your office at HarperCollins.
Shit.
Boom.
Boy.
Just behind the
just kidding.
scenes
No
of the
wonder-
writer
We never
world.
did that. We never did
No
that.
wonder I got shit canned.
Oh, no.
What?
No, we never did that. But we did consume some cannabis together and talk about some ideas that really helped the book come together, man. That was a cool period for me. It was 2 years to write that book. Originally, it was a year, and you guys extended it another year because I was having a hard time getting my brain to work.
Right.
But you end up with Ben Fountain, a great novelist, saying, man can write.
Yeah.
Or Dwight Garner, sorry to praise you here in public, or Dwight Garner in the New York Times giving you a rave. That doesn't hurt.
Yeah, it was cool.
And let me
Fucking
just add Rolling Stone's comment: the best football memoir ever.
Did they really say that?
Yeah, they did. But of course, you can't trust Rolling Stone. Look, you know the shit they published about University of Virginia scandal. I don't believe anything they say.
That doesn't make them, uncredible for the rest of their stories. Didn't you write for Rolling Stone quite
for
a bit?
many years.
Yeah. What's your opinion about the magazine?
Well, my buddy Jason Fine is the boss editor still and for a while, so I can only like them. When they're good, they're really good. And when something like the UVA miscue happens, it's a shame because they didn't own that right away. And they
that was about
butchered it.
False accusations of rape.
Exactly right. They had a non-credible source, a woman, Jackie, basically sold a bill of goods to someone who's normally a good reporter. And they didn't fact check it, man.
The reporters are ready to get triggered by some liberal snowflake story, man, and drop it on us. Fake news, man.
So.
Fake fucking news, man. But would you agree that journalists are pretty, I don't know. They really want the story now. And so they'd be a little less inclined to fact check now if it means that they can get their story out first because everybody's competing, right?
Right.
So many different, like internet, television, all that.
And the bar is going low. Okay, I watched Omarosa for 20 minutes this morning.
On.
Yeah. Well, the porn video. But I watched Omarosa.
Can you send me the link?
On Flavor of Love.
Yeah. And I'm
She was
not
on
in
that?
it. And,
Yeah, some of us watched Aretha Franklin this morning rather than Omarosa. But
and more in the
I
loss.
can't believe we went to the same school.
I clicked on something that said quadrupeds. That's all. Anyhow.
You never know when you're clicking around where you're going to end up. Well, I want to get into the reason we did bring you here for this type of banter, but specifically, one of the elements that we have been doing lately is our book club. And as our Caveman Poet Society name change time, we wanted to do an extended version of Book Club! Ow! Book Club. And we wanted to bring in some writers, some thinkers to talk about a book that was important to them and find out why. And this is a sports book. This is a book, Hirsch, that you recommended to me after we signed together. We were going to work together, and I was going to go do my work. You said, read this book.
Well, I've given it to a lot better writers than you, and they've all been inspired. So,
all right. So tell us what makes it so inspirational. What connection do you have to this book?
My connection to this book is also my connection to Fred.
This Fred.
I'm sorry, it's going to be a little confusing. I'll call Fred Exley X. And I'll call Fred here Fuckface. But anyway,
that's what Mom did.
Fuckface and I met at a small college in Pennsylvania.
What year was this?
Dickinson. Oh, I don't remember the year. Let's just say back in the day. Okay, we'll leave it at back
60s?
in the day. No, come on. Sort of in the early 70s. We were still there. Okay.
You don't have to bullshit us, man.
Okay, 1951.
Come on.
And
I'll just say the football team played single wing. Does that tell you something?
It's probably in the 70s. I would say
and Fred went both ways, of course. Anyway.
What about on the
Off
field?
Oh, that's totally what he meant.
You guys are you're smoking, man.
Oh, yeah.
Man, really.
We're hot, baby.
Yeah. Anyway,
This is youth versus beauty right now.
Yeah.
So Fred and I, knew each other from the locker room. He played football, I played soccer, and but it wasn't until another gridiron jarhead, my roommate, brought out his bong, did I find out that Fred and I shared this infatuation for a book that had come out recently called A Fan's Notes by Fredrick Exley. And, this is a book that sounds like it's going to be a book about football and Frank Gifford. I don't know if you guys are too young to remember Frank Gifford, but you at least remember Kathy Lee Gifford, right?
Of course.
Anyway.
The Giants hero.
So, yeah.
Was knocked unconscious by Chuck Bednarik.
Right. Okay, but this book is not about Frank Gifford, nor is it about football. It's about success and failure and living vicariously through someone else. And Fred Exley was at USC during Frank Gifford's glory years, and he became this obsession because Gifford was the success, the guy who caught the touchdown passes and was rewarded for them by whatever blonde cheerleader could get to him first after the game, and Exley was the failure. He was, as he writes, I thought he wrote it, but maybe I dreamed it.
That long malaise, my life. That line.
Yes, that's a good. No, right. That's admitting. He says that this book is an account of that long malaise, my life.
Better pronunciation, thank you.
Yeah, you guys probably don't know the word.
Malaise,
but,
yeah. Bored,
okay.
bored, period of bourdom.
Or
I
a
don't
country
know.
in Southeast Asia someplace.
Yes. Okay.
Hey-o.
All right.
Can we get some ding-chings? We need sound effects.
Fred Exley writes in his what is a fictional memoir. I mean, that's what he was calling it, and it's basically an autobiography. He says that it was my Fred. Can you remember those words?
Why don't I use your cheat sheet?
No, I don't. It's not a cheat sheet. I can't find it. Anyway, he says it was his fate, his destiny, his end to be a fan, to sit in the stands and watch Frank Gifford, become this glorious.
So he follows
god.
him around after USC? Is that what we're talking about?
No.
In effect, but there's an interesting later chapter. You're going to read your thing in a moment.
Yeah.
But when we got to know X, Frank had come around to saying,
How'd you guys get to know him?
Oh, I that's a whole story.
That's why we're here, baby.
Yeah,
Let's tell
baby.
some stories.
Okay.
We're going to bounce around.
Yeah.
Bebop.
Let me remember the
Boom,
date. I
boom.
wrote down the date when we met him.
Boom, boom.
We met him on June 1, 1981. I know that because in my copy of A Fan's Notes, he inscribed it to me and put down the date. This, however, is the second inscription. The first one ran off the page because when we met him at 11 a.m. in the morning, he was 6 Greyhounds in, and a Greyhound was his drink of choice. It was vodka and grapefruit juice.
Yeah.
And alcoholism plays a significant role in this book.
Yes,
Certainly.
I'm going to get to that. I mean, while he was obsessing, over Gifford, Exley stumbled into several, mental hospitals and sordid sexual entanglements, and so Gifford just basically remains the avatar that goes throughout the book. But in the end, as I said before, it's a book about living your life through someone else's, achieving your dreams through someone else. I never knew what that was like until I met Nate.
Right. Of course.
So anyway, Fred and I met at Dickinson College. We made the pilgrimage to not to be a name dripper, but we have one other friend named Richard Ford, the Pulitzer Prize winning novelist. In 1981, Richard Ford was just a shitbird like the rest of us, and he was working on a piece for the late lamented Inside Sports magazine, which also employed Fred Exley. The magazine was in the Newsweek building, which was like a landmark on Madison Avenue in Midtown Manhattan. And Ford told us, knowing of our obsession with Exley, that you could always find Fred at the bar across the street, ironically named the Dallas Cowboy. And so one day, on June 1, 1981, Fred Schruers and I made our pilgrimage to the Dallas Cowboy. Fred Exley was not hard to miss. At 11 a.m., there was only one customer in the place, and that customer had his head on the marble bar top.
Oh, he had his head on the
right
on the bar.
Yeah,
Holy
the bar.
shit.
So, but it was 11 a.m. and we were able to jangle him awake.
Hey, wake up! Sign my book.
Introduce ourselves as these acolytes,
Groupies.
Yeah, groupies essentially. And God knows, he must have felt like Frank Gifford after a game
Right.
with these groupies coming.
Well, that probably felt good for him.
And so we bought him a few more drinks.
Oh.
And we spent the afternoon with him, and it was amazing.
That's cool.
Well, we dragged him around town. We
Yes.
picked up one of my editors at Rolling Stone, Paul Scanlon, who had edited some of Fred's Rolling Stone. He put fiction in Rolling Stone. And then we found Paul. He then had a deal at Paramount Pictures, Gulf and Western Building. And I remember as we came out, Fred nudges me. I look to my right, and Susan Sarandon is in a band launch shirt with no brassiere. And back in the day. So then we had to have
Susan
three more
Sarandon
drinks.
is a beautiful woman.
Oh my God,
Gorgeous.
yes. And there's nothing wrong with her, conformation. So that was a thrill. And
Conformation.
He always
Nothing
those are the kind of
wrong.
big words you learn at
I don't
Dickinson
see
College.
nothing wrong with your confirmation.
gonna do some meth. Okay, so Dave, go on.
Meth?
Well, anyway, the thing about
Hold on, I got a question for you guys. I want to, break it up with a little break it. I got a question. How old were you guys at that time when you met him? Late 20s? And how old was this man? I want to know.
50. He was a sort of stocky, grizzle-bearded, mid 50s drunk.
So he had written the book in his 40s? Is that what it is? Mid-40s?
No, he had written the book in his late 40s. Right?
Yeah.
And he was on the decline, writing the rest of the trilogy.
Right. Exactly.
Trilogy.
He wrote. We did do a Hirshey to where he lived, which was in a small town in the upstate New York by the
Alexandria
St.
Bay. St. Lawrence
St.
Seaway.
Lawrence River,
Yeah.
and it was called where he grew up. Was a decent football player. And his teammates said to us that he was an extremely talented tackler. And
That's a skill.
Yeah. And
We knew a
what was-
casting agent. This girl
he was
tackled.
living up there essentially on the generosity, extraordinary generosity of his friends. There wasn't a single place that we went to in Alex Bay where the proprietor didn't say, X, your money is no good here.
Oh.
So Fred and I were in heaven. We drank and
It's because he spent so much monch there, or is it because he's such a talent?
Because he is such a cult literary legend.
Oh, so
and
he is,
and he's brought all this at least this measure of renown to this town.
So we were
Alex
greeted
Bay.
in a friendly way because we were sycophants. So
Yes.
Right.
yeah, we're part of the legend. Now, just an incidental moment. We were supposed to go to the Cleveland Browns Giants game at Giants Stadium back in the day, and Fred was coming down from whatever upstate New York airport. We were accompanied by Richard Ford, the aforementioned Richard Ford. Well, we were informed after we missed Exley at the game, they wouldn't let him on the plane, a little too toasted.
Oh,
Right.
wow. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. He spent his days at a place called the Dockside, drinking with the fishermen, the sons of the fishermen he grew up with, like working very much of a working class milieu, and then he had what he said was 4 hours of lucidity from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m., where he worked in a small office above a Chinese restaurant. But the rest of the time was spent
Drinking.
Except for calling us about 10 p.m. And the girlfriend at the time would go, oh, no. And it'd be 2 hours.
Right.
2 fun hours.
Yeah.
Oh, you go hang out with
On
him for
the
2
phone?
hours?
He'd call
No,
up.
he called drunk on the phone, screaming about Mailer and Cheever and Updike and all the other.
What's he screaming about him? Competition?
Well,
fuck them?
Yeah, fuck them. You're right. Like, I deserve
Fuck
to be as
Mailer.
famous. He kept saying to me, the hierarchy is fucked. I'm every bit as good a writer as Mailer and Updike, and who the fuck knows me? And I said, Fred, a lot of people know you and worship your books, and Fred and I, of course, are examples of that.
He was a sweetheart. It can't not be said.
Yeah.
He was the kindest possible man, and everybody felt for him. Near the end of his life, he would walk on the golf course every day around the periphery of it, covered in nitroglycerin patches in case he caught a heart attack, So,
Here are two-
How old was he when he died?
He had a stroke at 62, I believed. So there are two memorable scenarios with Frank Gifford. The first was on the occasion of his third book, the last part of the trilogy. As Fred said, both the second and the third were shunned by the critics, which
always happens.
I
right?
don't think Here's this is off point. But what's wrong with being a one book writer? That people say that is, Ralph Ellison was a one book writer. Malcolm Lowry was a one book writer. James, you can go on. And
Yeah, but for the writer doesn't want that. That's the thing.
Right.
I understand, but I would rather write one masterpiece than 30, 37
mediocres.
Dick Schaap books.
Well, you probably get
Sure.
paid more for 37 Dick Shaps.
Okay.
Dickie Shaps.
It's hard. Like, you only remember for the last thing you do. I mean, football was the
Right.
same way. It's like, you played well last year, but what are you doing this year, motherfucker? You
Yeah.
suck.
Yeah.
Or if it's even like, you were good yesterday, but yesterday don't matter. What's happening today? People have the shortest memories when it comes to that.
And if the first book is sort of about failure, and then your next two books, you double down on that.
Right.
Right.
You got issue.
Exactly. Right.
Well, Thomas Wolfe had a good follow-up, right?
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Those are some beautiful passages of time in the river.
Yeah,
If you go Google October, the evocation of the month of October in Of Time in the River, just one of my favorite pieces of American writing and English writing anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, is it-
I was pretty struck by Look Homeward Angel in the end of Time in the River. Which was the other one? There was,
Did it have a biblical reference in it?
you
those are
you
the
can't go
three
home again.
Yeah, wow. Just
Yeah.
a little book there.
Yeah, they're really large books, but they're beautiful.
Yeah.
That guy was real tall and used to, apparently, the legend goes, right on top of his refrigerator.
Oh, he
Like
was a big
standing up.
galoot and had a really colorful life. Thus, Herman Wouk, the popular novelist, wrote Youngblood Hawk, totally about him, just with a name change. Piece of
Oh, really?
fiction. Yeah.
Are we still talking about Exley?
Yeah,
We're popping
Hirsch,
around, baby.
Hirsch,
Stay with-
give us a shot from the fans' notes. here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's several little shots that I can give you because these are about the nature of fandom. So he says, the Giants were my delight, my folly, my anodyne, my intellectual stimulation. With Huff, I stunted up and down the room among the bar stools, preparing to, quote, shoot the gap, end quote. With Schaffner, I faked two defenders, quote, out of their cleats, end quote. Took high swimming passes over my right shoulder and trotted, dipsy-doodle-like, into the end zone. With Robustelli, I swept into backfields and with cruel disdain flung flat-footed, helpless quarterbacks to the turf. And,
See, that's like the fact that a fan can have that feeling about these things, the people that are doing it, and it's
Yeah.
not them. It just shows you how powerful that experience is as a fan. The vicarious, experiencing it through them. Like, he feels like he's there.
Right. He writes, as he also writes, Frank Gifford went on to realize a fame in New York that only a visionary would have dared hope for. He became unavoidable, part of the city's hard mentality. I would never envy or begrudge him that fame. I did, in fact, become perhaps his most enthusiastic fan. No doubt he came to represent to me the realization of life's large promises. So it was very simple, really. Where could I not, with syntax, give shape to my fantasies? Gifford could, with his superb timing, his great hands, his uncanny faking, give shape to his. He became my alter ego. That part of me had its being in the competitive world of men. So that
powerful.
shows you how much he meant to him. And
An obsession.
Oh, hell yeah.
and what was interesting were the two times that we saw them together. First was at Gifford's lavish Upper East Side of Manhattan duplex, where he threw Fred a book party for Last Notes from Home, the third part of his trilogy. I've never seen Fred look more uncomfortable in that Tony setting where all these swells.
William Styron, just a pretty good country novelist, right?
He never mingled. He found a place at the bar. This is a party in his honor. He found a place at the bar, corner of the bar, and he sat there for all 3 hours, mostly next to Styron, who he
who's Styron?
William Styron wrote Sophie's Choice.
Okay.
Does that mean and that
and later in his life, Darkness Visible about depression, which became the landmark book. But
really one of the great novelists of the 20th century, I would say. Right?
And Sophie's Choice bore a resemblance. Styron admired Fred for sure, and vice versa.
Yeah.
One of the earmarks of that was it was about a young guy in publishing who finds Meryl Streep, for want of a better actress to name, in Sophie's Choice, and it's a love story, but it's also a story of not quite making it in that world, like Fred.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, he stayed there for 3 hours, and he was only comfortable in with his kind of people, as he said, and those were the working class schmoes up in upstate New York. But the most vivid illustration of this is the Giants' first Super Bowl win. You must remember it, Nate. If was it 1988, Fred?
It was 86. The game played January 87.
Did they beat the Niners in the NFC Championship?
Yep, then 35-20 Denver with Elway and everybody.
Right. So thanks,
Tom Jackson.
Those are great football years.
Thanks to Gifford's largesse.
Oh, this is funny.
Thanks to Gifford's largesse, he arranged for Fred to have 4 50-yard line box seats in the Rose Bowl. In the Rose Bowl
and
for
2 cheerleaders.
For the championship game, and Fred looked around at all the at the affluent crowd in that area, and he said to us, boys, I think I'm just going to take a taxi back to my friend's place in Hacienda Heights, take my pants off, pour myself a vodka and grapefruit, and watch the game like all the other slobs in America.
Wow.
So that and that was it. I mean, here he gets to see
what a complex psychology going on.
Yes, all right. This should be the fruition of his dreams. The Giants finally make it to the Super Bowl, and they're actually winning. And Fred can't handle the that kind of riotous scene.
A little subset of that was he hands me Gifford's pass, sideline pass. Gifford was doing the broadcast for the BBC, of all people. So I have a nice laminate, and he said, it's good for the first quarter. I thought, well, great. I'm going to watch the game. I was 50 feet away from Bill Parcells on the sideline. And the first quarter ends, and I'm looking around happy as shit, and 2 guys in yellow vests come up, and not gently, they clapped me on the back and frog marched me out of the Rose Bowl because my pass was expired. So
at least you got the first quarter.
It was amazing to behold too, indeed.
Yeah, and do you remember when Montana lay broken or was it Steve Young?
No, that was
Montana.
We're
talking about Montana. The Broncos right now.
You're talking about Leonard Marshall?
Yeah.
Hitting him?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That was not quite as epic as the hit that Gifford took in 1961, Fred, from the Eagles.
I got a whole story
Chuck
about
Bednarik. Have you ever heard about this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Tell
us.
Go
ahead,
Fred. I was writing a lot of stories for Dave, who was an editor, the number 2 at the Daily News magazine, the Roto, the color Roto, because it resembled a real magazine, especially under Dave.
I believe I was number 1, right? Until I was fired.
Jack Sanders was still there.
Right, okay.
Get over yourself. So I call up Sam Huff because I'm writing about the Giants linebackers, then coached by a little no-count guy named Belichick. Right. Who's just as unmouthy as Ray Perkins or Parcells or any of those. amazingly good prick.
Last night, sorry to interrupt you, but last night one of the comics said that Putin is the Belichick of world politics.
Oh, that's pretty
good.
cool
That's
reference.
good.
He is that, just as evil. He's filming us now. So I call up Sam Huff, and my thesis, and part of the call, I said, Sam was a hero of mine growing up, played linebackers. And I said, so do you think Exley thinks that maybe Frank ended up at the Hall of Fame because of what Bednarik did to him? Sam goes, I seen a lot of guys get the crap knocked out of them and not make the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I just felt so stupid because he's obviously right.
Yeah.
Frank, my boring inside stat, he caught 73 touchdown passes for the Giants. I think that's still the record.
Wow.
No, 73 touchdowns, 48 by air.
That's right.
But we don't think of Frank as
No,
a
you
receiver.
think of him as, as the guy who got busted cheating on Kathy Lee.
Yeah. What position did he play?
He played halfback, but they didn't even call him bubble screens then and stuff. They just swing him out in the flat, and he made people miss.
Yeah. And that's what they should go back to with football. The position-specific stuff is getting, in my opinion, way too extreme. So you got guys who can only do one thing. They're not versatile players. It causes injury. There are statistics that show you that kids who play multiple sports get hurt less than kids who play one sport. 29 of the 32 first-round draft picks this year in the NFL were multi-sport athletes in high school. And the more specialized the sports get, the more injuries that happen, and the more teams are unstable, in my opinion, because they depend on the workload of one person who can he's the only guy who can do his job. And I think the NFL should go back to a more utilitarian form of ball movement where it could be like Frank Gifford, and you can do a whole lot of things. I think some teams are doing that, but I digress. That's what the Caveman Poet Society is all about.
No, but you would know. You did a lot of. I think you were geared to some level as a possession receiver. Would that be fair to say?
You know, I don't like that term.
Yeah.
Possession receiver is a way of saying that he can't beat people deep. He's a guy that's gonna, he's a big white guy. Is basically what he's telling me. I'm a possession receiver. So I think there's a lot of little stereotypes that go along with that. But I think that I have good hands. I guess that's like the above average hands. That would make someone a possession receiver, someone who's durable on those short throws and who has better hands.
And we'll go across the middle a little, huh?
Yeah, we'll go across the middle. That's a skill you gotta learn. Some guys don't, but what they tell you is you're gonna get hit anyway, so you might as well catch it.
Yeah,
because the motherfucker's gonna hit you.
Hell yeah.
So even if you go try to protect yourself, he's still teeing off on you.
Yeah.
So you just gotta catch it. Sometimes it's coming. You just have to, turn your head. That's what she said. That's my guy. So what was it about this book that really resonated so much with you? Because, of course, there's a lot of books about fans out there. There's a lot of books about drunks out there. What was it about Fredrick Exley's book, A Fan's Notes, that was so monumental in your life?
Well, just how obsessive one becomes as a fan.
Were you that obsessive as a fan? Did you identify with that? Did part of you want to go down and just jump on the crazy train and just lose yourself?
No, ironically, not until middle age when I decided I was going to be, Lionel Messi. But but I now can see the pain and suffering of being, a fanatical supporter, and you're
in a good way.
Well, I think Exley learned the lessons of life from it,
right?
So, and how the fine line between success and failure.
And there's also the component. You're coming of age and you start falling in love with girls, and they don't always fall in love with you, except maybe in Dave's case.
Well, it's the mustache. I had a mustache since I was born.
This is a podcast, not a video cast. Listeners at home, I want to let you know, David Hirshey has a mustache.
Not just a mustache. I mean, a mustache that was appraised by Tom Selleck. I mean, he
so that I was there for that.
Literally?
Selleck said, yours is looking, this is a direct quote, yours is looking a little weak.
Yeah.
What?
Okay. Yeah, because we had a mustache off at some stupid
right. I have a picture of it.
Yeah, you can't beat Tom Selleck in a mustache
off,
man.
I know. But, I dare to dream.
It's like beating James Harden at a beard off.
Yeah, hell no. But
Or beating Eben
In what?
at a douche off.
Oh.
So let me turn the tables
Excuse me,
just
Evan,
for a second.
did you disappear for the last half an hour?
That's not for
Took
the
a dump.
public to know.
Few minutes.
Oh, okay. You're all right?
I had to throw up a little.
Yeah.
Did you guys?
We have a strict weight requirement here at formerly Mindful Warrior, now Caveman Poet Society. We jump on the scale every day. If we are not at our target weight, we need to shed weight. One of those ways you can do that is by ingesting a drink. I think you saw us drinking that makes us vomit every 2 hours for 36 hours. After those 18 vomits, you're pretty much clean.
And that explains the rubber suits too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the plastic all over the floor.
Yeah, I get that.
Just to be
buckets.
clear, there's no weight limit for your guests, right?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
That's why you're here.
Body mass index.
Yeah.
F. Okay. Did we? So the last thought about Exley in that obsession is he represented young manhood turning older without fulfillment, which describes our lives.
Right.
Yeah, well, I want to talk about that, as it generates to that now. Are you guys feeling, as you're getting older, that your lives aren't as fulfilling as they were when they were young?
In terms of
Your penis,
orgasms per
yes.
minute or
Yes.
what?
No, all
we're
of
still
it.
filling.
All of it.
We're
If
still
you want to
filling.
talk about the functionality of your genitals, if you feel comfortable, I'm sure the younger men in the audience would
Well-
like to hear what awaits them.
What I think is so fascinating is that Fred Exley, he had this. He was a very obviously haunted and tormented by
Good
really
word for
his own.
Failure.
But not really, because I mean, like you said, Frank Gifford is fucking throwing this guy book party to
right.
celebrate the work that he did, and yet it wasn't enough for Fred.
That's right. He wanted the admiration that went along with it. He wanted the reverential whispers.
But he got a lot. To your
But
point,
I
yeah.
imagine some of that you get by the football crowd who aren't really literary people probably feels a little hollow. He wanted to be respected for
Yeah, he wanted 60,000 people to be cheering him.
No.
No, not
Then
literally.
we would have run the other way.
Not literally.
He probably wanted
No.
the adulation of a specific slice of America.
That's pretty
That's
much
right.
it. Yeah.
That's
and
right.
anyone else who praised him, it wasn't good.
Yeah.
And the poignancy is, why doesn't that make you happy?
Yes.
Writers, I had a book that could have won the National Book Award,
Well, should have.
Should have. Why aren't I happy?
Yeah.
I
Tell
would dine out on
us
that.
about your book.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
Hey, Jed, tell us about your book in another new segment of
Go ahead, Fred. Tell us about the book that should have won
I
the
am
National-
extrapolating from. No, we don't care about my little Billy Joel biography. That's about him.
It's
But I'm
not.
just
By the
saying-
way, it's not little. It's the definitive book on Billy Joel, and one of the best books on a musician that I've ever read. And I read the Springsteen book and others. I'm partially biased since I was going to publish the first iteration of that book, which was an autobiography by Billy Joel with Fred Schruers. But when he sent the final manuscript to his 3 ex-wives, they didn't.
They kiboshed us.
They kiboshed it. And Fred, to his credit, I think every writer should have one of these moments, sold the book again for more money.
Billy's accountant used to look at me at shows and stuff and go, the guy who wrote the same book twice for double the money. He's really kind of bitter.
Did you have to rewrite it?
Of course, he had to
But
make it by Fred
Billy had
Schruers.
given me, we brag, and it was through 100 hours of interview. So I had the stuff. All I had to do was, instead of saying, Billy, did this, I wrote Piano Man, just say, he wrote Piano Man, and here's what went down. And he'd give me access to all of his gang who've been with him for up to 45 years. Wow. So anyhow, there was plenty of stuff. The shame is David earned the right to publish that book, but Billy had it in his contract, and he pulled that sucker a week away.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
a week
wow.
from publication, right.
Because why?
We had to throw in, Nate's book in place of it. It was that
This was because of the wives at the very end?
Basically
yes,
so.
Basically, yeah. He can you imagine if you had sent your book to your family?
And they were like, "Don't do it." When I changed the names of the ladies I was dating that I wrote about in the book, at the urging of the lawyers.
Right.
But everyone else, I used everyone's real name. But there was a real fear about how people were going to feel about it, how they were going to take it. Like I remember dropping it off, giving it to my parents and being like, "Bye," and I left. I left the house, and they ended up reading it, and of course, and they loved it. But it was weird. My mom said. It was really good, Nathan. It was really good. I learned a lot of things about you, a lot of things that I probably don't need to know, but now I know them. Yeah.
So she's not surprised now when you disappear into the bathroom for 20 minutes, right?
No.
Okay.
But how long did it take you to write that Billy Joel book?
Only 8 years. Well, I met him in 2008. And before I even signed the deal, I won't tell you the blow by blow, but in 2008, we hop on a plane to Australia, and I didn't know I had the deal until 3 cities in. But then they cancel it ultimately, and Dave and I cry. There's a 2-year pause. Billy comes to town, and he calls me backstage at some show and says, "I'm going to rip up the NDA. You just do the book. You got carte blanche to use everything I gave you." So that's when I went and took it to an agent, and we got the second deal going.
Cool.
And Billy's still a friend. I had to write something about him in Billboard, really about another show, the Randy Newman show, and I called him up on Monday morning and said, "Hey, how do you know Randy Newman?" And he said, his dad was a doctor, and he operated on my leg in the early 70s. So small world ship.
Oh. So
That was a scoop. I didn't know that, Fred. I
Quite a
read
scoop,
that.
yeah.
Wow.
So you've been a working writer for how many years?
Let's see. For a guy who's only 42, it's weird.
42 years?
No, because I'm
40
like
years.
50.
It doesn't matter how old you fuckers are, all right? Nobody cares.
He's been a working writer for 40 years.
You guys are, okay, 40 years. Yeah. So you went to school to be a writer. Did you know that in college?
I knew I wanted to be a writer and work for the student papers and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then...
Excuse me. We were both on the staff
Excuse
of
me.
He
he raised his hand
I
too,
did,
people.
because
Yeah.
teacher, can I just...
Yes, you may. Interject.
Thank you.
Yes, David.
Fred and I were both, I believe, columnists, I think, for the Dickinsonian newspaper.
Right. I wrote about a lot of
Fred
stuff.
wrote about music and
movies
and bestiality. And I wrote about, under a pseudonym, about what a horrible coach, horrible soccer coach the school had, because he wasn't using the skilled players enough.
Right. So to clarify there for everyone, our guest was a member of the soccer team, and he was also a writer on the newspaper. He developed a pseudonym at his writing post so he could criticize the coach that wasn't playing him.
Right.
Completely
and
corrupt.
I do remember to start.
That's how Stephen A. Smith got his start in media. Did you know that?
no,
He did the same fucking thing for his
Jesus.
college
Really?
basketball team.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. You've got.
I knew he reminded
You could
me
be
of it.
America's new favorite asshole.
Wow. Come on. I think he's pretty good.
Stephen A. Smith?
Yeah.
Come on.
I do.
All
right.
He's a, come on.
Oh,
Let's-
it's
don't
shtick.
bring that-
It's shtick.
Don't
It's
bring
shtick, Nate.
that in here.
Okay. All right.
I know it's a shtick.
Yeah.
But there's athletes don't look at it that way. And when you're talking about men and their performances and you're insulting them and calling them names and insulting everything that they've worked for, they're way better than you at the thing you're criticizing them
fair
for.
enough.
And it comes to a point where it crosses a line, and athletes do not respect that, man. I can promise you that. And if that says something about whether or not he deserves it, in my opinion, you got to be fair and balanced, like Fox News.
So Skip Bayless reaction.
Skip, also of that same ilk.
Yeah.
He's very, very critical, demonstrably critical and outlandish. That's his shtick. That's his personality. And he tries to act like, but I will give you this. No, I gave you that. Oh, yeah. You're right about that. Whatever. Skip.
That's good. That's good. I think that's a hunk you should put in your stand-up.
Well, maybe I will.
Skip
This is
Bayless.
where I practice my
Right.
shit.
Okay.
But no, I think those two guys specifically have that thing. And there's a lot of more balanced guys who, and I get that it's just entertainment, but it's like, 24 hours a day of ESPN, ESPN2, all the ESPNs. So they have to create content for it. And what they found is people like when people argue and call people stupid and, you got to catch that ball, that dog, that is horrible,
Well, you've heard it from the stands, right? People think they own your ass, right?
Oh, yeah. Because they pay to come watch you play, and that's a lot of money to go to a game. And so they think they can yell at you. Yeah. But if every week you pay a bunch of money to go and just get mad and yell at people for sucking, what does that say about your taste?
Really?
Or your life.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There are people who go there to be really mad.
Right.
If there's bad teams, you kind of know they're going to lose, and the people go there and just hope they win, but fuck! It's like this super
But those
letdown.
are the same people that, you're happy they're doing it there rather than beating their wife at home, right?
Well, there's an argument to be made for that. There's also an argument that it makes it worse at home for the wife. That it froths you up into a point where you actually do need to physically release it somewhere because there is no physical release happening. It's simply the, osmosis of being around it and being like, ah! Then you got this energy, and what do you do with it? I mean, it creates these tribes, this tribalism around it.
Right. Well, my wife, during the World Cup, my wife literally left for 10 days to stay with a friend because she couldn't stand the hysteria of my
World Cup stuff?
Yeah.
So,
well, describe that hysteria, David, because let me also introduce this part of you is a big soccer fan. We know he played in college, but he's written
poorly. I played poorly in college.
It's
okay.
obvious. It's obvious.
Because I didn't start till my junior year. So
your voice makes it obvious that you were bad at soccer. Okay, but you know soccer, and you've coached it, you've written about it, and you are a huge aficionado. So tell us what that was like at your place during the World Cup.
Well, they're not. I banned anybody from watching it who was not a true believer. I mean, I didn't want any casual soccer fans coming over and asking me questions or anything like that. And they had to be all in.
Or asking me questions.
Yeah, right.
Kind of like you guys do when I go over to watch football.
That's right.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Because this was, but Matt, we won't ask you questions during the Super Bowl.
I'm fucking with you.
We
I don't mind.
We don't ask questions during Super Bowl. Anyway, and so it was very intense, and I basically, put a sign on the door of my house saying "closed for the World Cup," and that's what it was like.
So it was a little bit of a Fredrick Exley situation.
Yes,
over there.
in that sense, yes.
You were in your underwear.
Yeah,
you had scotch. But the difference here between you and Fred Exley,
he didn't smoke.
That's what I was. Would you let me finish my lines? You just fucking jump on him. The difference is he wasn't a stoner.
Right.
You are.
Right.
How long have you been smoking weed, David?
40 years. Since I met Fred. What can I say?
That was the first time.
Yeah.
Basically, for me, yeah.
So do you guys think the cannabis helps your work as an editor, as a writer? Does it make you a better writer?
I think it makes me a looser writer. What I do is I write the first draft, maybe under the influence, and then in the morning, after I'm howling, I try to take that and alchemize it into gold.
Beautiful.
Wow, I can't match that.
Well, if you're stoned right now, then that's good, because alchemize it into gold is a winner. What about you, Fred?
When I'm stuck, right, maybe that's when I smoke. Take a walk around the hood and puff a few, and then I'd say, oh, my original lead did suck, but now I have a new idea. As long as you have something to carom shot off.
Yes,
right. Do you guys get distracted by the internet, by your phones, by all that?
Yeah.
Do you think Dostoevsky could have written Crime and Punishment with his iPhone on the desk?
No.
I can't even fucking read it. I can't read anymore. It's like I can't read extended.
That's a thing.
Yeah.
People are writing about this now.
Yeah. Not having the the attention span to sit for 2-3 hours and just read. I can't even watch a whole TV show, you guys.
I hear you.
Like people are like, yeah, start watching whatever show. There's 6 seasons. Let's binge watch. I'm like, I can't fucking sit still for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit inside for 5 days.
But I've seen you when you're writing.
Yeah.
That's
when I can zone in. Yeah.
Yeah, zoned.
Yeah. What about you, Ed?
Zone.
Where you been?
Are we talking about phones or smoking weed and trying to create stuff?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah, your creative
latter.
process. Does cannabis seem to help your creative process?
I used to think that it did, but it's really become, for me, my relationship with weed is totally transformed over the last probably few years. I can't really smoke that much anymore, man.
Why not?
I just spiral out into the abyss, and it's.
But here's the thing. I remember you saying that several months ago.
Yeah.
But then it changed. There was a change where you're like, okay, you stopped doing it for a little bit, and then you got a hold of it again.
I came back to it, and because I love it. I love the plant. I love where it takes me at times. Fred, like you said, I think it helps when I'm stuck in a bit of a rut, and it can get me out of that. Mm-hmm. But, man, I feel like I'm more creative and more lucid creatively when I'm not high.
Yeah.
For me, I've been dabbling with these nootropics, things that really light your brain up, which you guys would probably enjoy.
And need.
Nootropics are herbs, essentially?
Amino acids, herbs, anything from really nicotine to these various chemical compounds that you can buy online. Not sure if it's the black market or not, but...
Hape? Would hape be a nootropic?
Yeah, definitely.
You guys want to do some hape?
Nicotine in it.
Sure. We're going to snort it or inject it.
They blow it up your nose.
You get it blown up your nose.
Oh, I have bad sinuses, so
that'll clear that right up.
I'll pass.
It's impacted with Coke for Dave.
It would clear it right up.
But the phone, man, is a devastating device. I'm realizing more and more. Mm-hmm. I'm about ready to totally unplug myself. The problem is, how would people get a hold of me?
Well, do the outgoing whatever, like just dumb down to a flip phone. You can still have a cell phone, and then slowly wean it down so just have a landline.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a movement towards that in the next 5 to 10 years. People pulling away from technology, pulling away from these boner killers that we keep right next to our balls.
Right.
You wonder why no one can have kids anymore. No one can get a boner because these fucking wires, our wires are crossed, man. Our wires are crossed. And
is that why it takes 3 days to get a response from you?
Yeah, it's got to go through my balls.
Right, okay, yeah.
But I think that it's affecting everybody, and everyone's feeling the drag of it. Yeah. And that could be part of your platform.
You said it last week. How many times have you gone and scrolled through social media or been on your phone for 30 minutes to an hour and come out of it feeling, I feel really happy now?
Yeah.
Nobody.
Never.
You feel fucking horrible.
Yeah.
I saw a cartoon somewhere on Facebook the other day. It's a woman saying, no, I don't want to go out for a drink. I'm just going to run through the same 3 apps for a couple hours until I fall asleep.
Basically.
Yeah.
That's our existence. And it's not just happening at home in lieu of plans. It's happening out in public, on the bus, at the bus stop, in an elevator, walking down the street. People are walking across crosswalks with their eyes on their phone. People are walking downstairs.
While driving a bird scooter.
While driving a bird.
Yeah.
And I think people have this misconception that it's making us more connected, and yet it's fucking pulling us out of our humanity. People are more willing to be fucked in our society nowadays because of the phones.
Yeah.
We're turning into these docile fucking thoughtless creatures that just wander around looking at the next fucking thing that's going to come on the phone, rather than getting activated like all this shit coming out about Trump. He's fucked all these women and paid them all off to stay quiet. And yet nothing's happening.
No,
Putin's got him by the fucking nuts with God knows what. Mm-hmm. Russia has totally infiltrated our government and our democracy, and yet nothing is happening. We're just continuing in this fucking thing, and everybody's like, well, who's going to do something about it? Well, fucking there's somebody out there who can make something
Mueller,
happen.
You have to have some faith that Mueller has got
I hope so.
But then will Congress act and change the situation, or will they be on their fucking Instagram too?
And will people like us help campaigns, or will we just say, I wrote a nasty tweet about Trump, I've covered?
Yeah.
Right.
There's no such thing as a Twitter activist, okay?
Yeah.
And there's people who believe that Twitter action is like changing the world. No, it's not. I guess with Trump it is, because he can communicate with it, or at least he can send the media on a fucking wild goose chase every time he wants to. He just tweets 9 different absurd things, and then
taking a dump at 5 a.m.
Yeah, and then that becomes the content for CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News for the rest of the day. It's like based on his tweets is their content.
But following your point that we're addicted to the phones, and what about the surveillance we're undergoing? That recent story, Google, you can turn off Google location and they're still following you somehow. So Google and Twitter are catching shit right now. Facebook as well, they should, because this is a commonplace. We all know it now, but we're not doing anything about it. They're exploiting our data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do we do, Fred? What do we do, David? You guys, we're looking to you to lead us. You guys got us into this fucking mess.
No, not into the
No, let me finish for once. For once. You got us into this mess, you and your generation. How are you going to get us out of it?
Harsh. That's harsh. Our generation, first of all, we're not 73 or whatever he is.
Listen, 60s and 70s, it's your guys' mess. How are you going to clean it up?
We didn't. Are you
We
giving us
didn't
credit?
start the fire. I know, you love his book.
Are you giving us credit?
We're phoning it in now. Sorry,
Excuse me,
guys.
are you
We
giving-
quit.
are you
We
giving-
collapsed at the
Smoking
fire.
weed. Santa Monica watching
do we have to
sports.
take the blame for the social media disgrace of Twitter? That's not our generation. Come on.
It's the fucking millennials. Who is it?
How are we going to get out of this mess?
People are going to start to come off those services because Zuckerberg and his ilk are not answering the questions about privacy. He lies to Congress, he lies to the media, and he's been, had a cushy time of it. Remember the Google guys, Page and Brin, they said, don't be evil. Then they turned into an evil empire. So we need enough anger out there and not wanting. Yes, it's convenient if I'm like for Dave, I was looking up electric dildos. And now I keep getting things passed along to me about that.
Right.
But,
have you ever had the experience where you're having a conversation about something and then you get an advertisement for the thing that you were talking
That's
about?
weird.
So are they listening? Is the microphone picking it up, sending it to these things, coming in
What do
your
you think?
inbox?
What do you think they make of this little confab?
I don't think they're listening.
Oh, okay. All
Not
right, then.
yet.
Not yet.
Fuck you, Google.
That's right.
Whoa.
Well, they're listening now.
Well, here's another one. You guys are New Yorkers or spent a lot of time in New York, right?
Yeah.
I was just there visiting family, and I have to say how fucking depressing it is.
Yeah.
Walking around Brooklyn and seeing this mass gentrification happening, where they've pumped hundreds of millions of dollars into the neighborhoods to put in a fucking West Elm and a fucking, a Lemonade and all these fucking places where it's like, why didn't you cut those local business owners who have been there for years? Why didn't you cut them a check for $2 million to refurbish everything that they're doing and reinvigorate the fucking local economy? Rather than, we can't spare $100 million on our margins, to fucking make a good place for humanity, to inspire more human welfare. Capitalism has tricked all the people in the middle class that it's all the fucking, it's the poor people's fault.
Yeah.
It's the other race's fault. It's the fucking foreigners' fault. And yet we could do something about it. Jeff Bezos, this fucking multi-billion-dollar tycoon, he's taken over Whole Foods. Their standards have gone completely to shit.
Really,
They used to not allow any GMOs, any shitty artificial ingredients, and now that's all pouring into Whole Foods, so you can't just go in and trust what you're getting. It's because he has to make that extra fucking $200 million.
To be fair, he's putting a lot of the money into the Washington Post, and there he's completely revitalized the paper.
But does that make it a political organization like Trump says?
No, makes it a good.
I think the staff is honest enough that whoever's running it, if he's not a thug, they'll continue to do fair reporting. But I'm glad you didn't mention Venice in the same breath. I live in Venice.
Well, Venice,
I'm benefiting from a real estate run up.
Yeah, but there's a lot of drawbacks too.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost unbearable around even the people who are
It's
around
creepy.
there, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. because it changes the type of person that comes to your neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, we're going to get into this on your pod, but the bird scooters are another, tool of another tool of opulence that's used around here.
And it's time for the plug that very soon my partner Tom Tyholtz and I, partner in podcasting, are going to have Nate on our podcast, The Buried Lead, about journalism and writing and other topics.
By the way, you could have left it at just partner.
You're so nice.
Where are we going to find that podcast? Where can our listeners find anything you're working on, the podcast and other stuff? And you too, Hirshey. Where can they find your shit?
So the pod, via iTunes or Libsyn, and then you can go there. We've probably done 60 or 70 of them in the past 2 years. So, they can pop right up on iTunes. Podcast, Buried Lead.
Great.
And,
how do you spell that for our...
good point. B-U-R-I-E-D. That works. Then no space, L-E-D-E. As we know, that's a convention that writers on newspapers use. You write lead, so no copy editor puts that into your story. You misspell it on purpose.
Yeah. Just one anecdote. When I was a young sports writer at the Daily News, I walked in one morning. I know this sounds like a humble brag, and it is. And I had just come from Notre Dame, and I wrote a column. And the managing editor comes up to me and says, "Hey, I really liked your column, Dave, this morning." And I said, "Thanks, Bill." I go look at the newspaper, and they had reversed. My lead was my kicker, and my kicker was my lead.
Huh.
So yeah, you've got to make sure that you identify the components.
They might flip the kicker in the lead.
Yeah.
I know we're going to wrap up, but Dave reminded me of something. He had a great boss editor, Jack Sanders, good novelist in his own right. And I walked in with my linebacker story, and I said, I had gone up to Ray Perkins and said, "Coach, can we talk about the linebackers?" And I wrote, "No," he said, which is what happened. And Jack, being the brilliant writer is, he says, "How about no," he explained.
That's good. That's a good edit.
You.
Very good edit. You need a good editor, Fred.
You do.
Yeah.
And I found one in you, David.
Thank you, Nate.
Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah,
today.
thanks
You.
for being
For
here,
having
guys.
us.
Yeah, now's about the time when we do our outro music.
Ooh.
But before we do that,
Before we do that, check us out on iTunes, everybody. We're also on Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn. Get your podcasts going. Listen to our pod and then put the fucking phone down. Take a walk outside. Say
Put it
hello to
down.
somebody you don't know. We can also be found at www.cavemanpoetsociety.com. On Twitter at cavemanpod. Caveman Poet Pod on Twitter, on Instagram at Caveman Poet Society, Facebook page coming soon. Fuck Facebook. Fuck Mark Zuckerberg. Until you start cutting checks to the little guy. That's our stance on that. And until next time, keep meditating, eat right, do a little writing, create some art. Become a human again. We love you guys. Thank you for listening. Give it to a friend.
everybody did a really good job on the pod. Said everybody did a really good job on the pod. Hey, yo, Eben,
Yo,
you did a really good job on the pod.
thank you.
No problem.
Nate
Yeah?
did a really good job on the pod.
Thanks. And Jed did a
Jed.
really good job on the pod.
Did a really good
On the
job.
pod. And Fred did a really good job on the pod.
Really
On the
good job.
pod.
Thank you, bro.
And
Thank you,
David
bro.
Hershey did a really good job on the pod.
A really
On the
good job
pod,
on
on the
this
job.
motherfucking pod.
On the pod,
On the motherfucking pod.
on the pod, on the